Karen's megaphone shrieked at dawn, "Move this junkyard on wheels or I'll tow it myself." But the junk was the sheriff's live-streaming command center, and she'd just declared war on federal agents. For 3 days, every tantrum she threw at the armored RV was captured on body cam, satellite feeds, and a viral audience. By sunset, her HOA reign would implode, and a hidden cartel sting would blow up in her face. This is what happens when entitlement meets justice. The morning air still smelled of dew when Karen made that threat, her pink jogging suit practically vibrating with self-importance. She stood in her driveway, megaphone in hand, glaring at the matte black RV parked beside the mailbox cluster of Willowidge, Lot 42C. It hadn't budged for 3 days. No one had seen anyone enter or exit. To Karen, that spelled conspiracy. It's scaring the children, she announced to a half-listening neighbor who couldn't recall seeing any children on the block in years. But Karen's convictions were never hindered by details. Ever since that RV appeared, she'd circled it like a hawk, knocking on its sides, scribbling notes on her ever-present clipboard, and trying to peer through the tinted windows. She posted on the HOA Facebook page hourly updates: eyesore in progress, ugly hazard, possible meth lab, each post more dramatic than the last. What Karen did not know was that this eyesore was, in fact, a high-tech mobile command unit belonging to Sheriff Duke Riggins and his multi-agency task force. They were in Willowidge for one reason: to nail Tony Delgado, a cartel-connected money man who lived just 4 houses down from Karen. The RV's black walls concealed cameras, microphones, and heat sensors. Satellite uplinks kept the feds in direct contact with regional HQ. Under normal circumstances, no one would have given it a second glance. But Karen wasn't no one. She was the self-anointed queen of Willowidge, a place where she believed every mailbox, bush, and ornamental fountain answered to her. That morning, she decided enough was enough. She aimed her megaphone at the RV and blasted, "Move it by sunset or I'll have it crushed." From inside the command center, Sheriff Duke and his team exchanged amused looks. They had encountered everything from hostile bikers to paranoid off-the-grid types, but Karen was a new breed, an HOA president drunk on power. Sheriff Duke said to a younger agent, "Let's see how she reacts if we give her just a little rope." The agent nodded, clicking a switch to ensure every angle of Karen's performance was recorded. Meanwhile, Karen marched closer, slapped a neon orange violation sticker on the RV's reinforced camera housing, and declared, "Immediate removal required by Willowidge Authority." Suddenly, a calm, mechanized voice from the RV's hidden speaker announced, "Federal vehicle. Do not obstruct." Karen let out a scream, so piercing it might have triggered local car alarms if the block weren't used to her shrieks. She jumped back as though the RV had lunged at her. A neighbor opened their curtains. Another stepped onto the porch with a coffee cup. The show had begun. Karen ranted, This thing is harassing me." She spat the words at the RV's unblinking camera lens. Inside, Sheriff Duke replayed the real-time footage, grin tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Ma'am," his voice boomed through the speaker, "you're live on 6 federal servers." Karen turned 3 shades of red, whipped out her phone, and started a Facebook Live rant about government intrusion. Yet the more noise she made, the more trouble she caused for herself. She had no idea that every shrill word was streaming to multiple agencies. As she threatened lawsuits against that monstrous wheeled menace, a blinking indicator on Duke's console revealed they were getting another visitor, a tow truck Karen had apparently hired on the spot. The driver hopped out, all confusion and secondhand smoke, hooking the truck's arm to the RV's front tire. That's when the RV's embedded lights burst on, flashing blue like a sudden carnival. A large display on its back panel flipped open with bold text, "Law enforcement vehicle, stand clear." 2 brief siren wails silenced the street. The tow truck driver froze mid-chain. Karen's tirade cut off in her throat. Neighbors leaned forward, wide-eyed. Finally, the RV door swung open. Out stepped Sheriff Duke. Late 50s, flannel shirt, a well-worn baseball cap, an approachable vibe until you spotted the badge clipped to his belt. He looked like an old friend you'd invite to a barbecue, except the entire vibe shifted the instant Karen realized he was legit law enforcement. She tried to bluster, but it's parked illegally. Duke just leveled his gaze. Ma'am, you've spent 3 days trying to evict a surveillance hub while microwaving chicken nuggets 6 feet from a cartel cash drop. Congrats, you're now a material witness. Her jaw worked silently. The tow truck driver wasted no time unhooking and fleeing the scene as if the pavement were on fire. Duke's phone chirped with an urgent message. He glanced down, then back at Karen. You've also just interfered with a federal investigation. He tapped his screen, playing back video of her calling the RV a death trap and claiming if no one claimed it, it belonged to her now. The corners of Duke's mouth tightened. Possession of government property. Nice. A few amused neighbors applauded. Karen glared around, betrayed by the same people who'd once found her antics entertaining. She stammered, but it's ugly. Duke didn't even bother replying. He took a step back, scanning the street. Already, watchers from the task force were tracking unusual movement at the Delgado residence. Because while Karen was busy overshadowing the entire block, the real target might be slipping away. Duke radioed into his earpiece, status on Delgado. An agent replied, lights off, no sign of him. He's gotta be spooked. He's canceled the trash pickup and no deliveries since Karen's meltdown. Might bolt. Duke rubbed the bridge of his nose. Roger that. Keep eyes on every exit. Then, as Karen stomped off to her house, he let her go. No arrest, not yet. He simply leaned against the RV and watched her storm away. She'll lead us right to him, he muttered. Some folks in Willowich had braced themselves for drama the moment Karen became HOA president. She'd always had a flair for imposing order, inventing citations for nonsensical offenses, an overlong grass blade here, a wind chime that was too musical there. She once tried to ban inflatable yard decorations, calling them visual pollutants. But this time, she had a bigger problem on her hands, real law enforcement. And because she'd physically interfered with the command center, multiple agencies were now reviewing her meddling. While Karen drafted new complaint letters against the RV that afternoon, 4 houses away, Tony Delgado shoved fistfuls of suspicious invoices into a shredder. Code words like landscaping, pest control, and decorative stone were peppered throughout. Even if Karen's beloved rulebook had deciphered them, she wouldn't have believed they were fronts for cartel money laundering. Delgado's house was a suspected hub for funneling cash through local contractors, and for months, Duke's quiet surveillance had been building a case. Now, Karen's commotion had startled the entire operation. Sheriff Duke's radio crackled. Sir, Delgado's moving cash. We need eyes, came Agent Colby's voice. Duke glanced out the RV window, where Karen could be seen on her porch, rocking in a patio chair, possibly reloading her phone for another rant. No, Duke said quietly. Let her dig deeper. She'll lead us right to him. He had a gut feeling Delgado would stay put long enough to see if this unexpected HOA fiasco changed anything. The question was, could Karen's unstoppable mouth do them one last favor? But Karen's next move wasn't stealth. She posted a flurry of social media updates, painted herself as a champion of suburban liberty, and called an emergency HOA meeting at her house, condemn rogue government vehicles. The new flyer read, Taking Back Willowich, a stand against overreach. She even invited a local blogger. The irony of a supposed champion of small governance forging random fines and forging city signatures was thick enough to cut with a butter knife. Inside the RV, Duke and his team examined fresh intel. An ATF analyst discovered that Karen had run the HOA like a dictatorship for years. Residents had been fined for non-existent violations, with money funneling into community improvements no one requested, like an $8,000 concrete swan at the entrance. Signatures for city permits matched Karen's handwriting. As each new detail emerged, Duke's laptop pinged with giddy messages from his fellow agents. They might have lost the quiet angle on Delgado, but now they had an unexpected gold mine, a suburban tyrant whose shady finances might intersect with cartel operations. Sipping coffee, Duke skimmed an HOA ledger that revealed multiple morale events reimbursed with association funds. Most turned out to be spa days, steak dinners, and consulting fees to Karen's nephew. The so-called HOA security company she used, Triage Services, was just a P.O. box and a cheaply designed logo. This was no mere petty power spree, it was corruption. Meanwhile, Karen kept doubling down. If she sensed any threat, she didn't show it. She believed she'd forced a government retreat because the RV's lights and sirens had gone silent. They blinked first, she proclaimed on a new Facebook Live, brandishing her binder of made-up citations. Her handful of loyal followers ate it up. Real residents, however, were quietly distancing themselves. They feared an even bigger storm might be brewing. That evening, the RV repositioned, moved down the block across from Karen's house. If she wants to be the star of the show, Duke said, we'll give her center stage. They settled in for overnight surveillance, scanning not just Karen's property, but also Delgado's. The two targets, ironically, were only a short stroll apart. Karen ranted inside her dining room to uneasy board members. She claimed the sheriff's flashing lights had been a malfunction, that the vehicle was illegal anyway, and that their neighborhood would rise. She sounded more like a rebel leader than someone who measured grass lengths for a hobby. Recorded audio streamed into the RV, crisp enough to catch every outraged breath. Karen described the Fed's presence as a scare tactic. We need to escalate, she told the group. Duke listened, arms folded. It wasn't her lying that struck him. People lied all the time. It was the absolute conviction with which she twisted every fact. She truly believed she was heroically saving Willowich, never mind the actual criminals just a few doors down. Agent Colby entered, laptop under his arm, looking amused. Got something, he said, flipping open the screen. There was a record of a contract Karen's HOA signed with Delgado's shell company, billed as shrub installations worth several $1,000s. Payment cleared, but no shrubs were ever planted. So not only did she interfere with a federal investigation, Colby remarked, she helped launder cartel money. Possibly without realizing it, or maybe she did. Duke exhaled. She's not just a nuisance now. She's a liability. The next day, the task force reevaluated the sting. Delgado was lying low. Either he'd skip town or wait to see if the Fed presence dwindled. But Karen was drawing attention by the hour. She had scheduled a town hall against tyranny in her own driveway, complete with a food truck and podium. She plastered the phrase Karen versus, the machine across cheap plastic buttons to hand out. Ridiculous? Absolutely. But also useful. Let's see if he shows, Duke said. Sure enough, at the height of Karen's big event, neighbors slouched on lawn chairs, half of them there for entertainment. An ominous black SUV eased into the cul-de-sac. Tinted windows, no plates, bulletproof engine rattle. It parked at the far end and idled. Karen pretended not to notice, but Duke, watching from the RV's rooftop cam, recognized it immediately. Agent Colby confirmed, matches Delgado's last known vehicle. The tension in the crowd was invisible but palpable. Federal agents in plain clothes mingled, ready to move if needed. Karen, working the mic, yelled about mind control signals in LED streetlights and illegal government parking, ignoring all logic. That's when her tone sharpened. She brandished her binder of so-called bylaws. We will now license any federal vehicle that enters Willowich, she declared, as if that meant something. The black SUV's engine revved. Delgado had heard enough. He pulled away slowly. He's biting, Duke murmured, relief creeping into his voice. Within hours, the task force had a new plan. Let Karen think she'd won. Let her keep screeching about government overreach. Delgado might feel safe enough to carry on business. Sure enough, the RV went silent. No more flashy shows of authority. Karen pounced on the chance to claim victory. She recorded a triumphant video in front of the RV, banner overhead proclaiming, "We the property owners." She boasted about scaring off the feds. Meanwhile, she was playing right into Duke's hands. 3 nights later, an unmarked van rolled up behind Karen's house at 3:13 a.m. No lights. 2 men hopped out, carrying rolled turf and a large toolkit through her backyard gate. Unaware, Karen slept peacefully in her bedroom. Federal drones hovered overhead, capturing everything in infrared. The men buried 2 fireproof cash boxes stuffed with unmarked bills and a container of burner phones. All were connected to Delgado's shell companies. One of those bogus tree-trimming outfits had thrived thanks to Karen's uncritical rubber stamp. Bingo. That was enough for probable cause. By dawn, black SUVs and armored bands poured into Willowich. Agents spread out in a synchronized raid. Delgado was arrested squirming through a basement window, wearing gym shorts and flip-flops. He shook his head, muttering, all this over a neighborhood queen. At Karen's house, agents knocked politely. She opened the door, wearing a silk robe and full makeup, phone aimed at them for her next social media live stream. "This is harassment," she announced to her audience of very few viewers. Duke stepped forward, hat in hand. "Yes, ma'am, and you'll be getting a crash course on the rights you've been trampling." Karen's composure wobbled when she saw the search warrants and the boxes agents began sealing up from her HOA war room. One wall had a framed photo of her scolding a Girl Scout for unregulated cookie sales. "I'm a patriot," she screeched, as agents carefully lifted the frames and binders. "You're a paycheck," Duke replied, waving an invoice for Delgado's so-called rose bushes. His cartel roses. Karen's outraged face shriveled to pale disbelief when they played audio of her approving one shady contract after another, or repeated her own words about towing, that monstrosity no matter what. She tried filming a final outraged rant, but the crowd of onlookers was minimal, and the few who were there openly mocked her. The local blogger wrote an article titled, "When an HOA president goes nuclear," and actually blows herself up. Federal agents delved deeper into Karen's finances. It turned out she'd been forging signatures not just for city permits, but also for internal votes on neighborhood improvements. She rerouted HOA funds into personal accounts, labeling them as security upgrades or community morale. Triage services? All under her control. She wasn't simply incompetent. She was corrupt and had unknowingly hitched herself to a cartel money laundering scheme. Sheriff Duke watched from the RV's doorway as they loaded Delgado into a cruiser. The main sting operation might have gone off script, but Karen's meddling had ironically cracked everything wide open. Sometimes your best informant is the one who thinks she's attacking you. The neighborhood that once tiptoed around Karen's temper was now wide awake, realizing they'd helped elect a tyrant in pastel yoga pants. The courthouse hearing was strangely anticlimactic. Karen wore a stiff blazer, hair shellacked to perfection. She tapped her foot, arms crossed, as the judge read the charges: federal interference, obstruction of justice, aiding a laundering operation, unlicensed security enforcement, misappropriation of funds. All delivered in a dry, measured tone that made Karen look small. She tried her usual strategy, feigning righteous indignation, but the evidence was overwhelming. One highlight: the prosecutor played footage of Karen yelling, "I'll have it crushed even if I have to push the button myself." The judge asked what button she meant. Her attorney stammered something about metaphors. The judge, unimpressed, moved on. By the end, Karen faced a hefty fine, had to repay the HOA thousands, and was barred from holding any future office in any homeowners association across the state. She avoided immediate prison time only because the financial side of the investigation would take months to fully unravel. Whether she knowingly assisted the cartel or was just unbelievably arrogant remained to be sorted out. Outside the courthouse, she tried one last public statement for the local news. It was drowned out by random traffic noise and a teenager yelling, "Free the lawn tyrant." Her attempts to salvage dignity fizzled. People who once humored her were done. She slunk back to Willowidge to pack up. Her house lingered on the market for ages, the asking price dropping weekly. No one wanted the place with that kind of history, but Willowidge moved on with surprising speed. A special election replaced Karen's old board. Residents chose a retired librarian who'd served in the military. Her campaign slogan was, "Let's focus on potholes, not power trips." She won by a landslide. Suddenly, yard decorations were no longer policed with threats. The monthly newsletter changed its ominous name, the Willowidge Authority, to Neighborhood Notes. Fines were reevaluated, forged documents shredded. People began chatting in driveways without fear of citations for loitering. A kind of relief swept the community, like taking off an uncomfortably tight shoe. Sheriff Duke made one more visit in his normal patrol car, no tinted windows or flashy gear. Several neighbors waved from their porches. Someone offered him homemade cookies. Another hung a welcome banner from Karen's former meeting table that read, "Thanks for saving our sanity." He gave a modest nod, accepted the cookies, and quietly surveyed the place he'd spent weeks observing from behind tinted glass. A new bench had appeared in the park with a small plaque that read, "In honor of oversight, humor, and lawful parking, Sheriff Duke Riggins." Nobody knew who installed it, and nobody complained. They just used it. Karen all but vanished from Willowidge lore. Rumor had it she'd moved in with a cousin 2 towns away. Word surfaced she tried launching a YouTube channel, Karen Unfiltered, dedicated to her brand of patriotic HOA wisdom. It never took off. People hadn't forgotten the viral clips of her meltdown, from shrieking about a constitutionally illegal RV to declaring herself the rightful boss of federally protected vehicles because HOA dues count as taxes. Online commentators had a field day, splicing her footage into memes labeled Karen versus the command center and when HOA meets CIA. A few months later, Duke was tidying up old case files when a package arrived at the sheriff's office. The sloppy cursive with heart-dotted eyes told him who sent it. Inside was Karen's official HOA manual, stuffed with clip art gavels and eagles on every page. A sticky note read, "For archival purposes, you win." He flipped through chapters like dealing with unauthorized flora and reporting suspicious lawn ornaments. Unbelievable. Yet it would go on his shelf as a trophy next to the picture of his old K-9 partner, proof that sometimes, in the strangest ways, justice finds a path. Meanwhile, Delgado's files had led the feds to other money laundering fronts across the region. Arrests rolled out over the next few months. None of it would have come to light if Karen hadn't marched up to a sleek black RV and slapped a neon violation sticker on a secret camera panel. In trying to oust a junkyard on wheels, she triggered the chain reaction that tore down a criminal network and her own crooked regime. Sometime after that, the new HOA held a casual neighborhood barbecue. Sheriff Duke was invited, so he parked his ordinary cruiser on the street legally, just in case. A dozen folks waved him over to the grills. There was music, but not so loud that anyone felt policed by a decibel meter. Kids drew chalk art on the sidewalks. No one berated them for scuffing the concrete. A retiree teased Duke about naming the potato salad in his honor, the Riggins Special. He chuckled, politely declining. As the sun dipped low, Duke leaned against his car, enjoying the sight of Willowidge without tension. Freed from Karen's petty tyranny, the neighborhood felt alive for the first time in ages. No fear of a pink-clad figure with a clipboard lurking behind hedges. Just an imperfect but genuine community that had taken its voice back. Karen never meant to start a revolution, but that's exactly what she did. In her quest to preserve a self-serving version of order, she'd exposed real crime and toppled her own paper throne. Duke thought about the bench plaque: oversight, humor, lawful parking. Maybe that was all it took sometimes. Real justice didn't always arrive in dramatic, camera-ready takedowns. Sometimes it was as simple as an obstinate busybody tangling with the wrong junkyard on wheels. He tipped his hat to the new HOA president, who was passing by with a tray of burgers, and she tipped hers back in thanks. Then he drove away under the pinkish twilight, leaving Willowidge to its second chance, free from the reign of Karen, free to be a place where a parked RV wouldn't spark a suburban war but might just be the watchful eye that kept real threats at bay. And that's what happens when an unstoppable force of entitlement meets the immovable object of federal justice. One had to give, and it wasn't going to be the law. Karen's downfall was swift, loud, and thoroughly documented, her name forever synonymous with the day the HOA tried to evict an undercover command center. Willowidge may not be perfect now, but it's happier. Because sometimes, to save a neighborhood, you have to let the self-appointed queen bury herself in her own paperwork until the truth emerges for everyone to see.